Hey, I'm Amar.
And I'm Matthew.
And this is Our Side of the Coin. Hey, welcome back to another week on Our Side of the Coin. I know we got a bit more of subscribers now, so that's great. Keep subscribing, keep recommending, keep sharing. Thank you guys so much. We've been pretty inconsistent because we've had a lot of snow days recently. Yeah, Michigan weather, you know how it is if you're from Michigan.
But I think that the snow season is dying down, so we'll be on a more consistent schedule.
Yeah, hopefully. Well, today we actually have a real topic for you guys for once. We're going to be debating whether or not, what are we talking about?
Whether or not a foreign language should be taught in high school.
Okay.
Should you learn a foreign language?
All right, so my stance on this is going to be that no, it's not necessary.
And I think that you should.
All right, you go ahead and take it away.
I think that, so I guess before we start, we should find the perspective of my argument. So we're talking about like American high schools. That's all I wanted to say, American high school.
American high school.
And I think that it's important for us to know a foreign language from that viewpoint because it's important to be able to empathize with other cultures because of like the way the modern world works in terms of society and economy. It's very globalized. I think you'll agree with me with that. And I feel like it's very important, almost necessary to be able to empathize with other cultures.
And I definitely agree with you seeing very many cultures, especially going to an international school. We see so many things. It's nice to know another language. I actually trying to learn 5 different languages. Well, not learning, but I know a couple languages and I'm learning a few others. And I understand that it's great to know these other languages, but I'm not going to say it's exactly necessary. Well, you do get to empathize with all these different cultural perspectives, right? Sometimes, although it's very helpful, I'm not denying that it's not helpful. Of course, me knowing Urdu, me knowing Spanish has come in handy. Me knowing some Arabic has come in handy. But, it's not absolutely essential to thrive in the American environment where it's English major.
So
but here in America, it's either learn English or get screwed over for the most part.
I will agree with that 100%. It's very hard to function in America without learning English. And that is sort of the reason why I think foreign language is necessary if you want to do the flip side, where you go to another country, it's very important to know the other language.
But we said we're saying in America, didn't we?
Well, let's just forget I said that.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. But if you want to be able to go outside the country, you should be know another language. But also, bringing it back to America, you said that you need to learn English to function in America. And why is that? It's because nobody bothers to learn the other language.
Right, and the system's working just fine.
Is the system working just fine? Because it makes it very hard for people who want to try to come in the country. And also, there are lots... Okay, America is founded on immigrants. All right?
Okay, yes, 100%.
100%. Like, the identity of America is the cultural melting pot. And being able to learn another language will allow that melting pot to work a lot better. And it'll, if everyone puts in, an equal amount of effort, then it'll make things smoother and less harsh.
Now, I don't want to sound like I'm super unempathetic. I understand, that knowing other languages will be greater for, the culture and everything. But think about, why, okay, so you're basically taking extra effort to learn another language that you may or may not even use during your lifetime. My dad took 4 years of high school Spanish and 4 years of college Spanish, and he said he's never had to use Spanish once in his career.
My dad currently works for a Japanese country, and he does a lot of meetings with the people from Japan, and he tells me a lot that it would be very useful for him to know Japanese, and that's because America is so culturally diverse, and also America is really globalized in terms of its economy.
America's also pretty centralized.
I'll say that America is centralized. Okay, fine. I'll just go back on what I say. America is pretty centralized compared to other countries, but it's not. It doesn't need to go out to other countries because other cultures come to it.
Okay, but at the same point, that's why we have assimilation in America. You can't just completely take. So if you keep bringing in new languages and new aspects of culture, and yes, they melt together, but that's why we have the American identity as we know it today. So a bunch of these melted together, and what came out of that melting pot was English. As a major language.
I feel like the difference with American, the American identity of the mixing pot as opposed to other countries is it's not that immigrants come to America and immigrants don't come to anywhere else. Belgium
obviously
doesn't have any immigrants at all. It's just Belgians. But the difference is that if you come to America, you can preserve your cultural identity and still function. And I feel like that is a part of the American dream.
to keep your own culture. Yeah, okay, I can see that. Yeah. But I mean, I don't know. Let me get some other thoughts on this. What do you think about the fact that America doesn't have an official language?
I mean, America doesn't have an official language in name only. You need to know English to function well in society.
But like you have countries surrounding us that have like. I'm just trying to get some thoughts on what you think about that.
I think that sort of plays into what I was saying. How you don't need to sacrifice your cultural identity to take on the American identity.
Yeah, of
the
course.
American identity.
That's part of the American identity that you get to keep your own culture. That's why you have different faiths and different races all living together.
Being able to speak another language allows you to communicate with those other cultures a lot much better and helps preserve what makes America special.
Okay, but what my stance is on this is that, and I'm gonna probably keep batting this point because I think it's the most valid point, is that it's not like truly necessary. And I definitely have to concede that it's totally helpful, right? And like learning Spanish, like even last summer, I based on this Spanish I know from high school, a repairman came to my house, only spoke Spanish, and I was able to help him whatever he needed with, and I was able to communicate with him in Spanish. And obviously that's pretty helpful, right? But it's not absolutely necessary, because how often does that happen?
Well, it's not necessary because so sort of my argument where I want to take this is it's not necessary because people aren't putting themselves in the situation where it is necessary, like because they don't know the language.
But why do we want to get into that situation?
Because first off, if we're talking economics, being able to speak another language will allow the American economy to like expand, or not the American economy, but like your own personal.
Okay, but here's the thing with the economy, right? People are way more. Usually, the exception is probably China here, but people are way more willing to trade with the U.S. than the U.S. is most of the time with them. Okay. Outside countries are looking to the U.S. for economic booms in their countries more than the U.S. is looking for, maybe with the exception of Saudi Arabia and China.
I think I misspoke. I'm not talking about like America trading with other countries. I'm talking about you personally. Like, working with other countries. Your economy. That doesn't make any sense. But like you could be able to broaden your horizons by learning another language. And the reason you're saying it's not necessary is because you aren't doing that. You aren't like pursuing the areas and careers where it would be important to know not the careers, but like in a career, the positions where you would need to learn language. You aren't pursuing those because you can't, because you don't know the other language. Okay, and that's where you don't need it. It's not that you're doing something that you can't. It's that the opportunity cost is what's lost.
Okay, but that's why we have people who can translate. That's what the current economy looks like. Okay, best example. You're a doctor, you run a clinic, right? Obviously, you'll have multiple patients who won't speak English. They'll either speak, common ones, Spanish, Arabic, mix, and especially depending on your race, people will look at you based on your race and be like, okay, he's about my race, maybe I'll trust him more. That's just a stigma that's going on. That's facts right now. It's not good, but it's the honest truth, right? But that's why people, in order to attract other customers, will bring in people who can speak other languages. Those people are hired specifically to do that.
You're talking about translators?
Yes.
The problem with the translators is that they're very helpful and useful, but the problem is you can't always get a translator. And
but that's the point. That's why there should be a whole separate market. Not everybody should have to do it. Not everybody becomes a doctor. Not everybody becomes an engineer. Like, do you get what I'm getting at? Translation, other languages should be its own set branch. Not everybody should have to do it unless they seek interest in it.
I mean, it also that translators having to hire a middleman, a third person, is very inefficient for everything. Like, because if you're translating, you're not talking to your doctor, you're talking to some person who's talking to your doctor. That you lose that connection. And also
how important is that connection
with your doctor?
With anybody.
I think that connection is sort of where I see the benefit in the language, is that connection. Because if you're doing any business, I feel like having that connection is very useful. And also just not in a business
very
sense,
useful,
not in a pragmatic sense, just in a sense of being able to empathize with people around you or in different cultures. I feel like that connection is pretty important.
And I've already conceded that multiple times, that knowing a different language is very helpful and it's very useful, but I'm still not seeing a good counter argument against why it's not necessary.
I'm saying that being able to empathize with other cultures is necessary.
Necessary?
It's necessary.
Why is
because that? Because of the factor at which the world is globalized at this current point, and also with America is pretty central in its economy, but in terms of like America has its hand in every part of the world. Mm-hmm. Would you agree with that?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, and you see all the times on the news, you see conflicts in this place and conflicts in that place, and I think it's pretty important for the common person to be able to empathize with those cultures, because in the ideal of America, in the ideal of democracy, it is those people who are making the decision.
You can learn those other cultures even with a language barrier pretty easily.
I feel like knowing the language is a considerable...
It's helpful. I'm not saying it's not helpful, but I'm saying that's what back to translators. That's what translators for. That's what automated translators do. If you want to read other countries' newspapers, like a lot of people here, what they'll do is they'll read like American New York Times, and then just to cross-check facts. Not everybody, but a lot of people who are actually who actually care about the furtherment of this country, right? Will read and just what's going on in their own country. Will read other newspapers that have been translated to English from other countries. I've done it. I know I've done it, and I mean. I know it's other languages, right? But I don't want to sit there like using. I'd rather see it in English in a language that I understand and that relates to me, so I can better relate to them.
You can learn a lot about another culture without knowing the language, but I don't think you can understand the culture without like your understanding of a culture is incomplete without the language. And I can see another flaw in my argument, which would be like you can't learn every language. And my argument is a lot of cultures, you can't just learn every language. But by learning another language, you also learn a lot. You also require a lot of skills. In the same way that like languages are different from other languages, like you think about how like you have English and you have Spanish, and like the differences, if you think about it, are not really that large in the grand scheme of language. Like the words are different, the grammar structure is different, but there's still a grammar structure. You still have words that you put together to make to make languages or to make sentences. But then you think about some other languages where it's just completely different. Like they're like
Arabic to English or Chinese.
You wouldn't even be able to like wait, there aren't sentences? What the frick is this? Or it's like you go off to
Japanese,
damn. So like that sort of thing. And that can apply to the real world too. Is you think about American society, and then you think about another country, and you think, oh, it's the same thing. It's just some of the words are mixed through. Like, you see the metaphor I'm trying to make?
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
But, like, that's not really how the way it works. Sometimes cultures are so different that you can't even comprehend. How different they are. And I feel like learning language is that sort of metaphor.
Yeah, language serves as a metaphor, but it's not a practical application of that. I
think that that's a useful way to learn that lesson, because you can read about a culture all you want, but I don't really think that if you don't have that hands-on experience, then you can't learn a culture very well. And sometimes it's not possible to go to a place and like learn. It's like, oh, I travel, I went to all these places, I have such a big understanding. That's not really practical for most people. And I feel like learning a language is a practical way to learn that lesson. And that's really why, because we're not talking about just learning a language. We're talking about, should you learn a language in school? And I think that is another reason why it's necessary to have it in school, is because you're trying to teach students that lesson, especially in an IB school, because that's like, if you think about international baccalaureate, that's the whole point.
Okay. And I guess you're right, but how do I want to explain this? So in history right now, currently we're talking about the Middle East conflicts back from the 1920s. We're seeing it from more of a Middle Eastern perspective, how the Arabic people interpreted this, how the British people interpreted this, and notice that we're beginning to sympathize a lot. When you see it from an Arabic perspective, you sympathize a lot more with the Arabic, but you're not reading the lessons in Arabic. You're still learning about it.
I mean, I guess that's true, but there's also a lot. I guess one flaw in my argument is I'm arguing that you don't know about a culture, and you don't know what you don't know. So like,
that's some TOK stuff right there.
I mean, would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, we don't know, and we can't really confirm anything that we actually know, because everything that we know is continuously changed.
This is where it kind of gets hazy, because my solution currently would be to all learn Arabic and then like.
But then you'd have to do that for everything. Yeah, you learn about the Spanish conquest, you'd have to learn Spanish.
But
you learn about French Revolution, you have to learn French. That's not practical. It's not even necessary. Okay, here's the other thing, right? People who don't have an interest in this. Let's take, for example, we talked American high school, not even specific IB. Forget IB for a minute, right? Currently in Michigan, it's required that you have to take 2 years of foreign language in high school. Okay. That's not, a lot of people begin to lose their GPA, lose their grades, etc. solely because they're suffering at learning a language. It's not even really worth the sacrifice at the end of the day, because a lot of these people are not really profound about learning about different cultures, and
I think that they should be. I think that it's very important to be able to have the skills to learn about other cultures, and if they're if they're not doing well in a foreign language, it's not necessarily like a sign that they're not good at, like, because
but that's how colleges will interpret it.
In an IB we have Hispanic culture class, and like I think
which is a great idea. Don't get me wrong. I love the class. I loved how it was integrated the Spanish that we learned, and it was in context. So now we actually know stuff about outside the U.S.
And I think that most schools don't have Hispanic culture. I'm trying to put up foreign language as a substitute to that. And going on, I went on a long tangent
for that. Well, I think if you're going to mandate,
I wasn't done yet. And I'm going on a very long tangent because I'm bad at speaking.
Go at it.
But if you're not doing well in a foreign language, you said like people are being punished because they don't know the language well, and the extrapolation I'm trying to make is that might show not an inability to empathize, but maybe like.
Well, okay, hold on. You're comparing learning your Spanish conjugations and not being able to understand Spanish culture. That's what you just compared. Because if I don't know soy eres es, somos soy son, I cannot relate to the Spanish guy or Mexicans being deported across the border.
To a lesser degree.
Oh my god. What? Okay, elaborate.
Well, okay, there's a difference between not being able to memorize all of the bunch of rules that language has for no reason.
But that's what you're testing
and then not wanting to put in the effort. So we're getting back to this sort of relates to our conversation about how should parents react to bad report cards. You have two scenarios. They're trying hard and they're not understanding, or they're not trying at all. And I feel like if the person is not trying at all, then that would be like you could extrapolate that into not being able to empathize with other cultures.
I disagree with that. I'm trying to figure out how I can say it in a way that... Okay, take student A, okay? Student A is, for example, Arabic, okay? And student A has been an Arab American for all his life, okay? And he sympathizes with Arabs and he sympathizes with the American cultures, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, student A does not know Arabic, okay? But student A has no interest in learning Arabic because he understands his culture well enough.
Okay.
What do you do about that?
I would say that that's not the situation that I'm describing. I'm describing empathizing with other cultures. Okay. And I would say that...
Other cultures,
yeah,
okay.
For that student, that is his culture.
Let's do it like this then.
Or his or her culture. Excuse me.
What will learning Spanish culture help an Arabic American do here?
Well, I mean, I guess it wouldn't help that much because they have that ability to empathize with other cultures because they have been put in two cultures.
Okay.
Like, they have the Arabic culture and they have an American culture. But for a person who's only grown up in one culture, like a student who's grown up in an American culture or a student who's grown up in an Arabic culture, that's where the benefit of the foreign language is.
So, why would you suggest mandating it to everybody then? Why would
well, because you can't just pick and choose who takes what.
Why not? I guess wait, why not?
I mean, I'm sort of thinking about this because I'm also thinking why not. But, because you have electives, like... Well, it's not just like pick and choose based off of whether you want to do it or not. Like, I get to pick band and I get to pick art because I don't want to do art. I want to do band. But I feel like everyone should have the skill to empathize with two cultures. And now, if you're saying it, if a logical conclusion of where we're going is if you're multicultural, then you don't have to take it. But if you aren't, yeah, and exactly, you can't do that. Like, so would you agree with me that it would be way better if we all just took it rather than excluding people?
How about nobody takes it then? Then you don't have to exclude anybody.
I think that, like, that you said that the skill I'm talking about, being able to empathize with other cultures, is very helpful. And I say it's necessary.
Okay.
And let's just suppose
suppose it is necessary.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, if it is necessary, then people who don't have that skill should develop that skill. And ideally, it would be through a culture class.
Okay, and I guess that's what I'm getting at here. We don't really need a foreign language class. I'd much rather mandate a culture class to a majority of the state.
I mean, I guess I'll agree with that, but you can't
and if
really...
you really want to, I guess a compromise that we could reach here is that the culture class should teach language in it in order to get that aspect of culture.
Or, how about the language class teaches the culture component? And now everyone needs to take a language class.
Okay, but I think here that... and language
I will agree with that.
Language is not easy to learn either.
Yeah, that's true. Language is not...
And
so maybe, like... You learn the language in the culture class, but the language component is not vital to success.
Yes, that is what I've been trying to get at the whole time. The language component of the courses that we take, how we mandate 2 years of whatever language in high school, that's an inaccurate representation of like what a person is able to do, and especially when colleges look at it. Because the way I look at everything is obviously through how is a college going to look at that. That's just my mindset, right? And colleges are going to see, okay, he did an A and everything else, and I'm thinking about like a couple of people in particular. It happens a lot. Straight A student, and you see Spanish, B minus, C plus. And their GPA, when colleges have to classify you by a number, they're not going to look at a lot of the times what courses you got, like what your grades were. They're going to see 3.7. Probably not a good candidate. You get what I'm getting at, right? Yeah. A culture class would show that, because empathizing with other cultures is something every job, every career needs, right? You can't be a doctor if you can't comprehend, empathize with your patients. That's like, if you can't do a business, if you can't empathize with your clients. And
it's harder to compromise with your clients.
Yes, but if you don't know their culture. That's my point. That there should be a lot more emphasis on learning culture and not so much on language.
I will agree with that. So the reason that I said originally language is important is because you need to have that empathizing skill. But it would be much more efficient to just make that the focus of the class. A culture class where what you're being graded on, the number at the end of the day, because that's what the colleges care about, is how well
you can empathize with other cultures.
Empathize with other cultures. And language is important to that. But like if you have all of the other parts of culture, because language is not the only part of culture. It's a part of the culture.
Yeah.
If you have the other parts very well, but you falter in the language part, that's not going to hurt you nearly as much as the
not understanding the culture. If you don't understand, like for example, a common example of this is, well, a lot of people now, because of the media and stuff, know stuff about Ramadan and etc., right? And I mean, like, it's good. It helps a lot of people empathize with like the Muslim culture, which is growing in America.
Yeah.
Yep. And
okay, I'll come to the consensus we made where instead of having a language class, you should have a culture class, and the language is a component of that, but you're not punished for not knowing the language.
Okay. Do we want to elaborate a little bit? Do we got a little bit of time?
We have 25 minutes. I think that's...
Okay, well, I wanted to talk about how this culture class should be set up.
Part 2. It's 25 minutes, and it's 3:30.
Is that 25 minutes? Oh, we were at 25 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Part 2.
Maybe part 2.
No, okay.
No, probably not.
Okay. Let's have some transparency here. We originally planned to make another one of these episodes a part 2 because if you've been listening, you'll know which episode I'm talking about. We said that, we should do a part 2 because there's a lot of time. And then a week passed by, and then we forgot everything. So we'll try to do a part 2.
Maybe.
No promises.